And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Right, Tuesday morning's flying weather graphic showing marginal VFR, Aleutians, Bering Sea, and Alaska Island, though, forecast to be VFR into the western Alaska Peninsula. Some IFR there around the Pribilof Islands, marginal VFR all the way up to the western Seward Peninsula. And some IFR here with this system tracking northeastward here along and just south of the Alaska Peninsula up toward Kodiak Island. And then a big band of IFR here from the North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, actually northern Panhandle, extending all the way up to the Arctic coast, and also over toward Misty Fjords, Wrangell, Petersburg, and those areas. And for the afternoon, a little bit of IFR lingering there over the southeastern part of the Panhandle, becoming VFR for the central and southern coast, otherwise marginal VFR to the north. This band up here pushing off to the east a little bit there, and then extending up to now the western or the central Arctic coast, right across the upper Yukon Valley, Brooks Range area. Good VFR back to the west here, though, into the northern Bering Sea, southward into Copper River Basin, Madanuska, Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet. Some marginal VFR there for the southern Kenai Peninsula, an area of IFR, again, Kodiak Island, up in across northeast Bristol Bay there, possibly in the southern Kuskokwim Valley. And another small area of IFR, that one starting from about this position here, tracking east-southeastward there, just clipping the southern Nunivak Island area and coming in toward Cape Newenham in the western Alaska Peninsula. And then for Wednesday morning, IFR up here over the eastern Arctic coast, North Slope areas, VFR in the interior, IFR for the Bering Strait, IFR around the Kuskokwim Delta area, maybe inland there toward Bethel, marginal VFR for the Bering Sea and the central and eastern Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula. And some IFR now from right off the east coast of Kodiak Island on up northeastward there into the eastern North Gulf Coast. And northern Panhandle, marginal VFR, VFR for the southern areas of the southeast coast. And then for Wednesday, over the southern quarter of the Panhandle, we've got marginal VFR there with IFR, again, some more IFR coming into Prince William Sound, down along the southern Kenai Peninsula, but nothing too serious. And over the interior, good VFR, some marginal VFR for the eastern Arctic coast, also here from Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula area, down into Togiak Bay, cutting off at about Dillingham eastward. And IFR, northern Bering Sea, just south of St. Lawrence Island, and also in the Bering Strait. And the next batch of IFR coming in with the next system there for the western Aleutians. Passes, Anatuvik, and Adigan. Mostly IFR for the day on Tuesday for the Brooks Range there, and those passes. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. VFR for rainy as well as windy, looking good for Tuesday. Isabel also VFR, but Mentasta, marginal VFR there. And then back to VFR for Tanita. And for Portage, marginal VFR becoming VFR, so improving for Portage Pass there, especially on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet here over the southeast coast. Otherwise, at the surface here, south of all of mainland Alaska, and just south of Kodiak Island, eastward there, or westward along the Aleutians. And icing, not much expected, nothing significant out here over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians, across southern Alaska as well. The main area, best chance of seeing some considerable moderate rime icing will be up here over the eastern Brooks Range, extending back along the Arctic coast, central western Arctic coast, to about Wainwright there. And from there, moving on to the jet stream, westerly, west-southwest flow, about 105 knots there, cutting across Dixon Entrance. And the remainder of the forecast area, mainland Alaska, Bering Sea, on the north side of the jet, well south off the chart there, south of the Aleutians, and at 9,000 feet, south-southeasterlies at about 40 knots here from right along the southwest coast, right up in toward the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence Island. Northwest winds on the west side of that low turn westerly at 45 knots. And then this small low tracking northeastward brings light winds over northeast Bristol Bay, but southwest 40 knots, Kodiak Island, 35 to 40 knots southwesterlies there in the central interior, and then 55 knots there over the extreme northern southeast coast. And then for the 3,000-foot winds, southwest 40 to 45 knots here from the Gulf of Alaska, strongest back toward Kodiak Island, diminishing to 35 knots there, Lincoln Canal Glacier Bay area, and southwest up to 40 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, south-southeast 45 knots there along the southwest coast to St. Lawrence Island. And turbulence with those winds, considerable moderate turbulence. St. Lawrence Island just clipping the southern or southwest Seward Peninsula there down in along the Yukon Delta coast. Another area of moderate turbulence here, northeast Kodiak Island, or east side of Kodiak Island, Fognak Island, the Barrens up on the south coast of the Seward Peninsula.